time. So we're going to come now for Prasarita Padottanasana, which again is a forward bending action, and you might need to have bricks for. I'm just going to show. It's a wide-legged action, but the same forward bending principles apply in this. Okay, so let's see, can we do that together? So from Tadasana, if you have a knee, hip or back problem, you step your feet. Otherwise you can jump. Stretch out the hands, the feet should be more or less underneath the wrists, with the middle toe pointing directly forwards. Now you've got to really, when the legs are wide like this, you've got to push down with the outsides of the legs. So the energy comes from the outer hip to the outer foot bone. So it pushes right down and it lifts up from the inner ankle right through to the inner groins. And then you have to lift your frontal pelvic bones up, more than you think. Now lift your chest, roll your shoulders back and down, and hinge forwards. And it's like a rotational action on the pelvis here. So we hinge forwards, taking our hands down underneath the shoulders, so they can come onto bricks if that's appropriate for you, or they can come to the floor. Now draw your shoulder blades down towards your back waist. Keep your frontal pelvic bones lifted up. Don't lose the action in the legs, pressing into the outer foot bones, extending the collarbones forwards, and breathe. When we come out of the pose, we're going to do so by heel toeing the feet in. So heel toe the feet towards one another, and then come up, step the feet together, and stand in Tadasana. Breathe. So I'm just going to show what we're going to do next. So don't worry if this is really not something you are able to do at this moment in time. Because you can just repeat what we have done just now. So, you can have a pile of foam pads, you can have your bricks on top of those, you're going to press down into the outer foot bones, and your hands come onto the floor. If your hands are on bricks, you certainly are not going to attempt this next action. So we have to lift through the front of the body, and then see how much can we lift. Can we take the hands back so that they come between the feet, and then rest the head down. Now the head might not come to the floor, so that's where your foam pads come in, because you can rest your head onto a big pile of foam pads. When we come out of the pose, if you are able to, you are going to take your hands off the floor onto your hips and lift up in that way. If that's too much, because it's a very strong action, the torso is a heavy part of the body, the spinal column is quite heavy. So if it's too much, you heel toe your feet in, just as we've done on the previous action. Alright. Step or jump the feet wide. So make sure that you've got your action on your feet, pressing down into those outer foot bones, pressing down with the outer edges of the feet and lifting your inner ankles. Really make sure that your thigh muscles are gripping to the bone, your tailbone is long and your chest is lifted. So from here, we're going to hinge forwards at the hips. So we've been doing some of these forward bends, so you know this action. Lift your frontal pelvic bones, tailbone long, legs nice and strong. And then you take your hands down either to your bricks or to the floor underneath your shoulders. So if you're working to your bricks, then that is absolutely fine. If you find that your inner knees are not very comfortable with this, just bring the feet in a little closer, work with your hands a little higher, and eventually this will come. For those who are coming into the next action, lengthen along the front of the body, flatten your palms, take your hands back So that the heel of the hand lines up with the heel of the foot, and release the head down. So don't get too hung up on this. Lift up, walking the hands forwards, and then either heel toeing the feet in or active in the legs, hands onto the hips, lift up, and then heel toe the feet in and step or jump the feet back to Tadasana. Breathing. We're going to come now for Adho Mukha Svanasana, and this time we're taking the heels to the wall. So I'm just going to show, I'll move these out of the way so you can see properly. You start on your hands and knees with your toes pointing straight back, and your toes will need to be about 4 centimetres, a couple of inches away from the wall. The hands come ahead of the shoulders, the toes tuck under, and you lift up so that your heels come to the wall. And then we push with the hands and we see if we can scrape the heels down a little bit. So you just wriggle the heels down, 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 down to where they'll come to. Okay, let's give it a go. So beyond the hands and knees, just check that your feet are a little bit away from the wall when the feet are going straight back like that. Knees hip width apart, feet hip width apart, hands shoulder width apart, and just slightly ahead of your shoulders. So from here, pressing down with the hands, pressing down with the knuckles, tuck your toes under, lift your heels up. So your heels now should be against the wall and your feet should be slanted to the wall. So in other words, you don't want the foot vertical to the wall. They're slanted away from the wall with the heels up and the balls of the feet on the floor. Now press into your hands, lift your abdomen towards your spine, lift your frontal pelvic bones up, and see if you can start to scrape your heels down. So move the heels down to where they'll come to. So again, you might find that one side's a bit more cooperative than the other. It's not unusual. Don't let the heels swing in. Make sure that the feet are facing straight back, that you're pushing into the hands, rotating the upper arms from the inside out. Breathe, fine inhalation, fine exhalation. Don't lose the lift in the frontal pelvic bones. Alright, and slowly coming down. So we're coming into Adho Mukha Virasana, sitting back on the heels, stretching forwards. If you need to have an alternative for this because the knees are not comfortable in this pose, then look at the inset. And when you're ready, slowly coming up. So the people who are coming into Shirshasana, head balance, you can come into your head balance at this point. If you're not doing head balance, then you can come into the next pose, which is going to be Sarvangasana to the wall. If you're not practicing either Sarvangasana or Shirshasana, then you can do the Viparita Karani action, which is shown in the inset. So I'm setting up a platform here. If you don't have foam pads for this, then please do get some. They're not terribly expensive and they're really very useful as yoga equipment, and we don't recommend that people come into this pose without a platform, because it can be very harsh on the neck. So once you've got your platform set up, you're going to move it so that it is about 15 to 18 inches away from the wall. So that's about 40 to 45 centimetres away from the wall. Now I'm using my bolster here as a launch pad today. If you don't have a bolster, you can use just cushions or folded towels or blankets underneath the back of the pelvis. I'll just show how we're going to work. So you press your hands into your bolster or into the floor. You roll to the wall. You roll your shoulders under, and then you climb your feet up the wall like that. Okay, and then if you have your balance, once you're there, you take your feet away from the wall and you extend into your inner heels. To come out of the pose, the feet come back to the wall, you bring your knees down, you roll down gently, take this support out and place it underneath your head here. Alright, so let's do that together. Make sure that your equipment is set up. Those working in Viparita Karani, legs up the wall, just come into the pose. You wouldn't be doing any inversions if that's this pose and head balance. If you've got any problems in your eyes or your ears, if you're on your period, you wouldn't be doing that. If you've got any issues with headache or migraine at the moment, then the inversions are probably best left out of your practice and just do legs up the wall instead. Alright, so having the back of the pelvis onto your support, press your hands into the support. Make sure that the base of the skull lines up with the front edge of the support, so that the back of the head is on the floor, the shoulders are lifted up onto the support. Then inhale through the nostrils, exhale through the nostrils, press down with your hands and lift yourself up to the wall. Once you're up at the wall, put your hands into your back. You have to kind of roll your shoulders under once you're in this position. And then use your hands to lift your back up, climb your feet up the wall, take your feet a little bit apart with your toes to the wall and see, can you work your hands away from your waist and towards your shoulders, so that you're coming more and more onto the top of the shoulders rather than onto the shoulder blades. This takes a little while to do, so don't worry if it's not there yet. If you feel you've got your balance, you can bring your feet together and take your feet away from the wall. Then you have to use your legs to lift you. So you have to extend the soles of the feet towards the ceiling. So people often ask, where should my feet be? Should I be pulling my toes down towards my face or stretching up like a ballet dancer? Well, it's neither, it's in between the two. So if you imagine there was a slanting foam pad on the soles of your feet and you were stretching up to that, then that's more or less where your feet should be. So see if you can bring your heels together and press your inner heels together and stretch your legs up. Keep the breath fine and even. If you need to come back to the wall, if you need to come down, then you come down. Coming upside down when you're not used to it is quite a strong action. If you start to feel pressure in your head, then just release yourself down, rest down. You can always come back up into the pose after your head has settled down. But sometimes people who get pressure in the head, it takes a little while of gentle practice to get used to the upside down poses. You just do a little bit on a regular basis and eventually the pressure starts to ease up. Alright, so everybody's going to come down now. So place your feet to the wall, those in Savangasana, shoulder balance. Bring the knees into the chest, slowly roll down Put your feet onto the floor, lift your pelvis up and move the bolster out the way and place the bolster behind your head. So if you don't have a bolster, that's fine. You just want to have the head above the level of the heart, which is above the level of the pelvis. So you've got a gentle incline on your body here. Fine inhalation, fine exhalation through the nostrils. Just rest down for a moment. Give yourself a little bit of time to recover. Those in Viparita Karani, legs up the wall, you can bring your knees into your chest now. Gently roll to the right and come down. Alright, so you can all sit up now. I'm going to work to the wall, if you have one. You're going to press your feet into the wall so that it pulls the back of your trousers down a little bit. And then you're going to place the belt and make a loop so that it's holding onto your foot. And then your belt comes around the back of your neck. So you're holding onto the belt with the left hand, holding onto. Now the loop needs to be long enough for you to hook your fingers into it. So your loop might have to be quite long. Okay, and that's fine, just as long as you've got an end to hold on to. And you're going to pull this hand as you stretch out with this leg. Now if you don't have any equipment, then you take a cushion, a bolster, a rolled blanket, something like that, and you have your dressing gown cord or your piece of rope and you work in that way. That will also be good for you if you're a little bit tight in these areas, because the first way of working is really quite strong. So for those of you who know that this area is a bit tight, or if you're new to yoga, then do the second way of working, holding the belt with two hands. Otherwise, take a loop in your belt, hook your fingers through it, take the belt from right to left behind your neck, press your left foot into the wall and pull on the belt with your left hand as your leg comes out to the right. And you've got to push the thigh bone away from you and rotate at the root of the thigh. Breathe. Come back up. Other side. So if you're working with your bolster, cushions, whatever, I'll just show again on this side how you'll be working. You have one foot to the wall, pressing into the wall. Go into the pose if you're not already in it. Those who are working with a belt behind the neck. Then you kind of move your leg across the body so that your cushions or whatever are really supporting the outer hip. Then you hold on to this belt. You can always take the arm out to counterpose you. It may well be that your leg comes down here. In this pose, if your hips are tight, you can bend your knee. That's absolutely fine to do that. Alright, this is a slightly different action, but it's good on the hips for those who've got tight hips. If your hips aren't tight and it's no problem on your knees, then you can straighten the leg out. Alright, and then come back to the centre, roll to your right and slowly coming up. So we're going to come into Shavasana now with a bolster or rolled blanket or a rolled mat or something underneath the knees, just to soften the back. So this is how you work. You can have a blanket underneath your head. You can have the legs up onto the seat of the chair if that's a more comfortable action for you. that you're lying down in your Shavasana. Now I'm not going to be staying with you in your Shavasana because I've slightly overrun on the class today. I wanted to get some of those last actions in, so you'll have to excuse me for not staying with you in your Shavasana. I would like you to do a 5 or 10 minute Shavasana because that's quite a strong forward bending sequence today. So just let everything steady and settle. You know that you have to release the body into the floor. This Shavasana is an important part of the practice. And it is a pose that we teach. So it's not that it's just being left to the end because it's an afterthought. It's very much a part of the practice. So releasing your Shavasana, relax in it, spend 3 minutes minimum in it. Alright, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Namaste.